Hello everyone, hello. Just gonna plug my new microphone in, just so everyone can hear me okay, because it's a little bit further away. Alrighty, hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. Just gonna check to make sure that I'm connected. Am I connected? Hopefully I am. Just gonna plug my new mic check. I think I am. Right, hello everyone who's signing in, so I'm a little bit further away from the camera than normal just so I can get everything in. So I can't see all the comments and I can't see everyone who's signing on. But if you have any questions, what I'll do is I'll flip through them periodically through the session today. And obviously any I miss I'll get back to once the live ends. So I hope everyone's well. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're all enjoying the September sun we're having today. So today talking about Udvartana or Udvarta, which is a really, particularly in India and Sri Lanka, it's one of the most used physical treatmms. I guess it loosely falls under the umbrella of massage, although it's slightly different. It's used so much, you know, in classical Indian culture, even outside, I suppose, of the remit of very much Ayurvedic culture. Udvartana is used as a very much a key part of dinacharya, as a key part of a daily routine, or at least a weekly routine. It's very common for Udvartana treatments to be performed a couple of times a week, to tap into all of the benefits they afford. It's a key part of clinical Ayurveda. You know, if you go to an inpatient clinic, if you go to a residential clinic, if you go to an Ayurvedic retreat or spa, you know, it's very common to have these Udvartana treatments done to you, again because of the benefits they afford. They have profound ceremonial implications. You know, in Indian culture, before weddings and things like that, the bride and the groom will have Udvartana performed to them about an hour or so before the ceremony starts, because it helps relax them, it helps calm them down, it helps bring a real healthy glow to the skin. So it's really saturated into Ayurvedic and Indian culture. We use it a lot in clinic. There's only a handful of the Abhyanga treatments, the physical treatments of Ayurveda, that we now regularly practice in clinic. I posted up a comment yesterday about the eye treatment, which we'll do a practical on. But Udvartana is one of them. We use them an awful lot. We actually performed one yesterday in clinic. So it's a really good one to know about, which is why I wanted to pick it for a weekly wisdom, because I think it has tremendous benefit. It can be pressed into service in lots and lots of different ways. It has an emotional impact, it has a physical impact. It's brilliant for particularly Kapha and Vata dosha, which I'll talk about. The beauty of it as well is that it's very doable. You can use Udvartana on ourselves, we can perform it on ourselves, whether it's a specific treatment we perform on our kind of whole body, as a less regular approach. You know, we might do, if it's indicated for you, you know, when we go through the indications, and I'll post up quite a big document when we upload this video to the weekly wisdom section of the website. There'll be some supporting documents, and that will list the full set of benefits and indications for using this treatment, also the contraindications when you shouldn't use it, and also some of the herbal remedy blends that you can use as part of it. But if those benefits really stand out to you, or they really apply to you, you know, you can perform an Udvartana treatment on yourself that lasts, you know, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes as a once a week, once a fortnight treatment. You can also perform it just, you know, very briefly on, you know, 2 limbs, you know, as part of a self-massage. So it's very doable to apply to ourselves, but you can also apply it to others. You know, if you've got husbands, wives, parents, children who would benefit from any of the indications for using this treatment, it's super easy to perform, it's super easy to learn. You can customize it in the most infinite way, because you can customize the blend, the herbal medicines you use. It's like internal. oral herbal medicine, there's an infinite number of ways that you can customize that, the dose, the strength, the herbs, the ratios. It's the same with this. So if you've got someone who's got a very specific problem, very specific issue, you can customize the herbs that you use to target that specific issue. So it's incredibly bespoke. So if you've got someone you know, family, friends who are suffering, it's something you can very easily perform on them to help them in their kind of healing journey. Again, that's very, very authentic in Indian culture, in classical Ayurvedic culture, in that, if someone in the household, associations, friends, families, whatever, are suffering, these are the kinds of treatments that were performed as a way of helping them, okay, within that family nucleus. So very, very practical, very, very pragmatic, sustainable, doable, achievable practices, and we've used them a lot in our family, particularly in the kids, if they've got indications for using it. So it's a really good one to know about. Okay, it's a really practical one to know about. So firstly, what is Udvartana? So Udvartana is, it loosely falls under the umbrella of something called Abhyanga. Abhyanga is any physical treatment in Ayurveda that's done to the body, whether it's massage, whether it's more clinical, whether it's Udvartana, they all fall under this umbrella of Abhyanga. Okay, so it's a physical treatment that's performed on the body. It can be from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. It could be full body. It could be one arm. It could be your tummy. It could be your face. There's lots of facial Udvartana treatments that are anti-aging, beauty treatments for kind of luster, complexity, kind of skin tone. I guess it's the Ayurvedic anti-aging. It's the kind of the Botox. It's the Ayurvedic Botox equivalent, I suppose. And we'll post up some recipes for that. But ultimately, it is a treatment that's performed using medicated oils. Okay, so either a medicated oil or a pure base oil, something like sesame oil, coconut oil, almond oil. But if you're going to use Udvartana, it makes sense, I think, to use a medicated oil because you're going to get additional gains. And then in addition to using the oil, you're using herbal powders. Okay, you're using herbal powders. So it's a combination of all of the benefits that you get from general massage, you're getting with Udvartana, because you're still using body strokes, you're still using stimulation to the skin and the nerves and the blood vessels under the skin, you're still using oil, you're still using medicated oil, but on top of that, once you've oleated and covered the body or the body part in the oil, you're then sprinkling, depending upon what you're using it for, a little or a lot of a pre-blended herbal mix onto the oil to make kind of like a semi-abrasive paste, okay? And that's what takes Udvartana from being a good treatment to a very clinically exceptional one. Because if you think about what happens there, if you've got the herbal oil and you've got the herbal powder on top of that to make kind of an abrasive paste, you've got multiple mechanisms at play. You've got the herbal oil itself working through the skin. So if the herbs in the oil are anti-inflammatory or immunostimulating or energizing or relaxing or whatever it is, you're getting those into the blood system transdermally through the skin. So that's your first mechanism. Second mechanism is obviously you've got the stimulation of the skin. The third mechanism is that you've got the abrasion of the herbal powder. The abrasion, almost exfoliating impact, what does that do? It increases microcirculation, it increases blood flow into the skin, it clears toxins, it tonifies the skin. And then you've got the actual powerful herbs you're using themselves. So the herbs in the oil are macerated into it, but here you're using pure herbs. You're using herbs in their pure, unadulterated form. So when they're massaged into the skin, the compounds travel through the epidermis, through the top layer of the skin, into the nerves and the blood vessels below it. So that's transdermal therapy. And that gives you a really, really powerful medicinal impact in its ability to use and customize herbal blends for what you're trying to treat. So let me just double check something, guys. I hope I'm coming through all nice and clear. Am I coming through clear?
Check to make sure that I'm connected.
Bear with me, everyone.
Just gonna plug my...
Okay. Hi Maria, hi Lindsay, hi Laura, hi Marcia, Claire, Sheila, Linda, Jika. I hope you guys are all well. Everyone can hear me, that's the main thing. I'm not talking to myself. So it really does up the ante. Like I say, we use this in clinic an awful lot. And one of the things that really draws me into it as a treatment modality, whether it's at home, whether it's performed on myself, whether I do it to Holly and the kids or patients in clinic, whatever it is that ability to customize it, because you've got 3 ways you can customize it. You can customize it in terms of the strokes you're using, you can customize it in terms of the medicated oils you're using, and you can customize it in terms of the herbs you're using. And the more you customize it, the more clinical gain you get. And that ability to customize it, like I said, is infinite. So all the Udvartana is a massage treatment, is a physical treatment where you're using oils and herbs to create an abrasive, exfoliating paste on the skin that induces additional clinical gain. Okay, like I said, it's a real staple of Ayurvedic physical treatments. So what are the benefits of it? What are the indications? There are so many of them. If I reel them all off, it's going to take a long time, and it's kind of going to be boring. So like I said, I'll post them up in a separate document. But just to run through some of the main benefits. The first one is its obvious skin as an organ. The health benefits on the skin, okay? Because what is the foundation of healthy, vital, young-looking skin? There's 2 mechanisms that are integral. The first one is microcirculation. Okay, the more blood we pull in to the dermis, into the second layer of the skin, the healthier we look. Okay, and as we age, the body, why does a 10-year-old, why is their skin so vital and healthy looking compared to a 90-year-old? One of the reasons is circulation. So as we get older, the body wants to maintain blood flow, oxygen flow into the core of the body, into the brain, which is obviously more important than the skin. And as microcirculation into the skin drops, with it comes a lack of luster, kind of pallor, a lack of elasticity, a lack of hydration. So anything that increases microcirculation into the skin not only has a significant aesthetic impact in terms of making us look younger and more vital, it also has a key clinical impact, and that's detoxification. Okay, that's one of the real buzzwords when we're talking about Udvartana, is detoxification, because the skin, yes, the liver is the most powerful detoxifying organ, but the skin is the biggest detoxifying organ. You think about how the skin is ginormous. If you see a skinned human, if you see the skin laid out, it's a massive organ. And we excrete toxins through every single square inch of that skin, okay? And what facilitates better detoxification through the skin is better blood flow and into the skin, okay? Which is why in Ayurvedic detoxification regimes, weight loss protocols, any kind of kapha-based ailment, it's really common to use Udvartana, because you're increasing the detoxification through the skin. So we're thinking because of that, the other main indications for Udvartana are things like weight loss, or if you're suffering with weight gain, obesity, metabolic problems, you use Udvartana. It's used for the classical kapha problems. It's brilliant for use in things like type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, water retention, those kinds of things. Why? Because it's stimulating, it's animating, stimulating, mobilizing. So it helps to bring kapha down, it helps to bring the metabolism up. Because of that, it's brilliant upon the digestive system. If you suffer with sluggish digestion, if you find yourself never really hungry, if you find your digestion's quite slow, sluggish, you get tired, a couple of hours after you eat, if you feel fatigued and tired, if you put on weight easily, kind of sluggish bowel function, Udvartana can work wonders, particularly, which is actually what this one is, strangely, if you're using a herbal powder, a herbal blend that's very stimulating, very animating and energizing. So it's a panacea for kapha, okay? If you're kapha based, If you're new to the mentor and you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm saying Kapha or Vata or Pitta, check out the introduction to the doshas series on the website, because that will overview the doshas in more detail. So it's brilliant for skin health, anti-aging, beauty treatments, detoxification, weight loss, diabetes, cholesterol, water retention. It's also very good for balancing Vata. It has a very significant impact upon the nervous system. So if you're suffering things like stress, anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, those kinds of things, it's very calming. And actually, the two treatments that we use Udvartana the most in clinic is those two things. It's the Kapha thing, it's the Kapha ailments. If we're managing weight gain, gallbladder issues, high cholesterol, high diabetes, those kinds of things, we use the herbal powders for that, Udvartana for that. The other side we use it for very often is those kind of Vata-based issues, stress, anxiety, overwhelm, grief, fear. Because we're using, if you think about the herbs, things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, valerian, you can use those topically. So if for Vata and Kapha, this treatment is a real panacea. Okay, and if you're, as a self-care practice, if you're going through a period of life where you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling very stressed, if you're hopefully regularly performing a self-massage as part of your standard self-care practices, it doesn't take too much more effort to add a little bit of herbal powder into that to take the gains to another level. Okay, so it's great for that. It's very good for things like chronic fatigue. Actually, there's research being done in Sri Lanka at the moment for things like long COVID. Udvartana, one of the main indications for use is things like chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, post-viral fatigue, general fatigue, lethargy, lack of get up and go, now long COVID as well. So it's a very animating treatment for fatigue if you're using the right herbal blends. It's kind of great for things like constipation, IBS. So there's so many uses. Okay, that's just scratching the surface. The only thing you need to be aware of, again, we'll provide a list of all of the contraindications when you shouldn't use it. But the main things to be aware of is you don't want to be using this if there's very kind of hot-based conditions or pitta-based conditions. Things like active inflammatory bowel diseases, active inflammatory skin conditions, oozing, weeping, eczema, during periods, those kinds of things. But there's not too many contraindications, fortunately, for Udvartana. So most people, most of the time, can use it. It's also very seasonally specific. It's used a lot less in summer, but autumn and winter is when Udvartana becomes really powerful, because everyone's skin health deteriorates in winter. The skin gets drier, the skin gets less blood supply because it's colder, and we're conserving body heat. So this is really good. It's very commonly used as in the interchange between summer and autumn and winter. Okay, so it's great to start using now. So how do you perform Udvartana? I'm just going to make sure there's no questions before I crack on with some of how we actually use it. Bear with me. Are there any questions? Those kinds of things. Yeah, so Deborah, great at this time of the year. At this, like I said, at autumn, brilliant to use to transition across. So very good at this time of the year. Maria, is it good? It's brilliant for osteoarthritis. Okay, for osteoarthritis, again, if you look at the introduction to the dosha series, there's kind of these classical Vata Kapha ailments. So the classic Vata ailments, insomnia, stress, anxiety, constipation, osteoarthritis. The classic Kapha ailments, weight gain, obesity, diabetes, high cholesterol, water retention, congestion. That's the other area that excels. Congestion, respiratory congestion, mucus, catarrh, sinuses, kind of wet sticky ailments, excels at that. So yeah, Maria, for osteoarthritis, this is brilliant. Even more so because you can actually target the joint. So if you've got osteoarthritis in your elbow or shoulder or wrist or knee, if you're using this oil here is the Maharanan oil, which is the most important oil for osteoarthritis. using that alone can be transformative. If you're using that with herbs that are indicated for osteoarthritis, things like turmeric, things like boswellia, things like nettle, if that's going actually onto the joint, you've actually got these compounds going directly over the site of the pain, trauma, injury, stiffness. Okay, so brilliant, brilliant, brilliant for osteoarthritis. It's often used alongside something called Basti therapy. We're going to do a whole series of weekly wisdoms over the coming weeks on these physical treatments. We'll do the ghee eye treatment. We'll show you how to do Basti treatment. So Basti treatment is the number one treatment for osteoarthritis, joint problems, joint pains, repetitive strain injury, carpal tunnel, etc., etc. And it's very common to do those two together. So if you might try and book out an hour in your life once a week or once every fortnight, where you might do a full Udvartana with specific reference to the joints that are injured, and then you might do a Basti on it as well. But we'll cover Basti next month. So yeah, it's great for osteoarthritis. So how do you perform Udvartana? Okay, if you're using it as a general, as a kind of a general non-specific treatment, then it's a good idea to use the more generalized herbs. So look at, if you're taking herbs orally, internally, they're probably a good signpost to the herbs you should use topically. So say you're taking, I don't know, 2,000 milligrams of Gaducci every day because you've got an autoimmune problem, as an example, then that's going to give you a nod towards the kinds of herbs that will be best used to the Udvartana, because you're doubling up the internal and the external. Okay. The other option is to use the very generalized herbs, things like ashwagandha, again Gaducci, things like turmeric, which are really good for. It's really good for skin health. Neem is very good. So there's, and I'll provide a full list of the best herbs to use, particularly for Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. This one here, which I'm going to use now, is a very, very Kapha. This is what we actually used yesterday. This was for type 2 diabetes. So it's fenugreek, it's ginger, it's turmeric, it's gurma, and it's a little bit of black pepper. So that's a very famous Ayurvedic blend that you take internally, either in tincture, powder, capsules, on your food, for type 2 diabetes, but we also use the same blend topically as Udvartana. So that's what that one is. So the process is that you first oil the area of the body that you're trying to treat, whether that's your whole body, whether it's your abdomen, whether it's your arms. I'm just going to use my arm now because obviously I haven't got a body here. So the first thing is that you oil it. Okay, you oil the body. So I've got some here. So this is Maharanan oil. Okay, so the key thing with the oil is that you want to use enough so it's really well lubricated, but not enough that it's running off. Because if it's really, really heavily lubricated, it gets a little bit too sticky and a bit too pasty. Okay, and it kind of starts dropping off. It doesn't work so well. Okay, is that computer working? Hang on, bear with me, guys. Let me just double check. Hang on. Is that working? That's all good. I'm terrified of technology cutting out here because it usually happens. So once you've oiled the skin, okay, you want to make sure it's really worked in. Once you've oiled the skin, you then get your powder, okay? And you sprinkle the powder, and how much you use kind of depends upon what you're trying to use it for. The more powder you use, the more abrasive it is, the more exfoliating it is, the stronger it is. So if you're looking for a more significant, quicker, more specific gain, something like osteoarthritis, you'd use quite a lot. So it's really quite abrasive. If you're looking more general, you'd use less. So you literally just sprinkle the powder onto the oil, and then you rub it in, okay? And what you get is you get a semi-solid kind of paste, okay? And you can see the turmeric in this. When I'm using turmeric, it's going to stain your skin for a couple of hours, but it always comes off. Just be careful with your clothes. Then once you've rubbed it in, you then want to actually perform the strokes themselves. And the key thing with Udvartana is that it's a heavy stroke up and a light stroke down. So you're always going from kind of distal to proximal, or end to low point to top point, or even usually with the direction of your hairs. So if you're going on your arms, you're going from your hand to your shoulder. If you're going on your leg, you're going from your foot to your groin. You know, so you're always working with the direction of the hair, never against it, okay, because that increases the friction. So what you do, so that one there is quite dry, so you might add a little bit more oil, and you should feel it. You should feel it creating heat as you're doing it, because obviously you've got the powder on there. You're creating that abrasion, you're creating that sandpaper-like effect. And once it's all rubbed into a nice paste, what you want is the long strokes up, and then gentle strokes down, long strokes up, gentle strokes down. When you get to a joint, you want circular movements around the joint. Okay, so if we were doing that now for osteoarthritis, you'd massage more oil into there, you'd get more powder, you'd work that into the joint, and then you go round the joint, like that, okay? So the key is you're working always from the distant to the top, distal to proximal, working quite, it's not gonna work as well if it's superficial, okay? You don't want kind of lackadaisical, you know, mindless strokes. You want really quite, you don't want it to be painful, but you should be really aware of that abrasion, of that kind of heat, exfoliating kind of sandpaper effect on the upstroke. And as you come down, a lot slow, a lot lighter, and a lot of pressure on the upstroke down. So if you're doing it on your leg, it would be the same. If you're doing it on the abdomen, it's always clockwise. So always starting lower right side, working with the direction of the colon. Okay, so never the other way. Okay, so always working lower right quadrant, up, across, down, around. So as if you've got a clock on your tummy looking out. Okay, and you do want to perform that. You know, if you're doing, say you're doing both arms, say you're just doing this, you know, as part of a general self-care. You want to be performing at least about 5 minutes per limb. Okay, so as a minimum. So if you're doing both arms, you're looking at about 10 minutes. If you're doing both legs, you're looking at about 20 minutes. Okay, but it's so easy to do, and you know, if you've got a partner or someone who's willing to do it, you know, to swap over. Again, that's a very, if you look at the classical traditions in classical Ayurveda and classical Indian culture, it's kind of a round robin where husband does wife, wife does husband, you know, parents do children. It's just something that is the same way that you might make someone a cup of tea. You know, it's common to periodically perform these kind of treatments on the people you live with as a self-care practice to keep the household in tip-top condition. Another use that's being, so in India now, something called Ayush, who's the governing body for clinical Ayurveda in India. And one of the things they're advocating at the moment is the use of Udvartana as a prophylaxis. And we're going to talk about this next month in more detail. But moving into cold and flu season, I think, you know, those of you who've listened to some of the other work we've done, I'm really worried about cold and flu season this year, because last year we didn't have it because we were in lockdown. This year we've got COVID on the up, we've got everyone mingling freely, and we've got no immunity to cold and flu because of last year with not having any. So I think we're gonna have, I think it's a ticking time bomb. I think it's a perfect storm coming with seasonal flu and colds, and I think that we need to really up the ante more than ever in terms of prophylactic approaches here. You know, the astragalus, the Chyawanprash, the Cytopalani, and in India now they use it, they're advocating this as a prophylaxis. Why? Because if we're thinking about the effects of massage on its own, we know it's clinically proven to elevate immune counts. If we then add in prophylactic herbs, antiviral immune stimulating herbs, ashwagandha, astragalus, rhodiola, reishi, all of those kinds of things. So, and actually that's the blend that's being used. Ashwagandha, rhodiola, reishi, and what was the third one, fourth one? I think it might have been Gaducci, I'll check. And that's the same thing. So you can just perform that, you know, 2-3 times a week as a way of just further saturating your immune system with an abundance of compounds that are absorbed through the skin to have a clinically significant impact upon the way our immune and our defences against viral infections are working in the body. Okay. And the other thing that's worth emphasising is there's always two trajectories for how you use Udvarta. One is more clinical and one is more aesthetic. So for the aesthetics, there's these 7 or 8 famous blends which are more facial. Things like they use milk, they use yogurt, they use turmeric, they use rose, they use kind of the really skin health supporting ingredients that are done on the face purely as an anti-aging aesthetic tool. And they're set recipes. They're set recipes with set ratios and set ingredients, and I'll post those up. And they're good, again, anyone that knows, obviously you can't generalize and you can't stereotype Asians and Indians as one, but I'm sure anyone that's got close Indian friends, one of the most common things you see is how much, particularly the women, how much younger they look than their age. It's phenomenal. And a lot of that is genetic, but they also, from the age of 20 onwards, these kinds of anti-aging aesthetic tonic approaches, they use it week in, week out, decade after decade, and it's no surprise why they look so young and youthful, because they're supporting their health. So those recipes are great, and I'll post those up. So that's one trajectory. The other trajectory is the more clinical side, which is what we're talking about here, which is where we're using these set blends. So the key thing is that if you look at on the website, there's all of the ailment management plans. So if any of those ailment management plans are relevant to you, so osteoarthritis as an example, because we're talking about it, the herbs that are advocated for internal use, you can literally just pick up and transfer across to external use. Okay, with the caveat, if you're using herbs like turmeric, be aware of discoloration. Ginger, black pepper, be aware of the fact that they can create a tingling sensation on the skin, because they're obviously quite heating and spicy and pungent. So I guess there's these two key uses for Udvartana. One is a general self-care practice to keep the skin in good health, to keep us looking young and vital, as a prophylactic, as a general self-care tool we do once, twice a week on a maybe a kind of either a small part of the body or the whole body, as a real act of self-care. Again, in the more classical tradition, you schedule 45, 60 minutes a week where you do that, and that's great. The other approach is where you're using it in a much more specific way, where you're using it to treat problem X, Y, and Z. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this one today is just because thinking about the treatments that have the biggest impact in real life in terms of what we see, Udvartana is right up there, okay, right up there at the top. And I think it's a tremendously powerful tool to know about. It's got so many uses and benefits, so many clinical indications. It's super easy to do. It's enjoyable afterwards. Another key point, there is quite important aftercare in that once you finish Udvartana, you want to have quite a hot shower or bath within about an hour or so. Okay, because one, you want to wash off the paste, and two, you want to open up the pores. You want to really open up the pores so everything is coming out. Okay, you don't want to go into a cold environment where all the pores shut down, all the circulation goes inwards. You want a really nice hot shower, bath, wrap up warm. Okay, because obviously depending on how much powder you're using, it can get a little bit sticky, a little bit messy. That's not too bad, and that would wash off with a flannel and in the sink. But a shower or bath is better. Okay, so if you've got a willing partner or friend or neighbour or anyone who's willing, it's a good thing because it's super easy to learn, and doing it on a body part's great. But if you can there are certain Ayurvedic treatments that are just, you feel so good afterwards. And after Udvartana, your skin feels alive. You feel tingly in a really good way, kind of like what tea tree oil makes you feel. You feel like tingly, and your skin feels super alive and not sensitive in a good way, and it's a beautiful feeling. And if you have a full body Udvartana, your neck, shoulders, back of legs, you feel sparkly clean afterwards. I love it. It's there's some of the treatments I don't particularly like in terms of having them done myself, and there's some that I love. I love Udvartana. I love Indian head massage. Anyone had Shiratara, where they pour the hot oil on the third eye, is mind-bendingly good. But Udvartana, if you have got someone, you know, who can perform it on you, you know, even once a month, even you should just try it as an experiment. You know, it's super easy to learn. Make up a blend that's right for you in terms of your doshas, or how you're feeling, or what you're dealing with, and just, you know, teach someone how to, you know, perform it on you, and do it for 40 minutes, and it is phenomenal. And, you know, if A does B and B does A, everyone wins. So it's and I'd love you guys to, if you can, I'd love you guys to at the very least do it on yourself. But if you can get someone to do it to you, you know, if you go to an Ayurvedic clinic in England, you know, Udvartanas are about £90, between 60 and £90 for 45 minutes, so they're not cheap. And a part of that is because obviously you're using the medicated herbs and oils, but the other part is because it's quite a specialist treatment. But it doesn't need to be, you know. But if you with this knowledge, it's so easy to do yourself. So at the very least, I'd love you to give it a go on yourself. If you can find someone to do it to you, brilliant. If you know, you can obviously order in the herbs, but ideally just use the herbs you've got. If you've just got ashwagandha, just use ashwagandha. If you've just got triphala, just use triphala. Even things like turmeric, fenugreek, fennel, seeds you've got in kind of your kitchen cupboard, you can use as well. But I'll post up these supporting documents that will give you a little bit more advice. I'm just going to see if there's, let me just check the questions. Yeah, Marie, I'm sharing some of the blends. I must do it if my thumb is very painful. If you've got a spur coming, the Udvartana and the Basti treatments are tremendously effective for those kind of spurs, growth side of things. So do try that. So what I'll do is I'll post up the 5 main aesthetic facial recipes, and I'll paste up the indications, the contraindications, and I'll post up some of the common blends for common ailments. Okay, so they'll go up tomorrow and well, this week. Okay, any questions subsequent to this, do let us know on the Facebook page and we'll get back to you. Other than that, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys feel motivated to give it a go, because it's such a good thing to try. I'd love you to try it. If you do, I'd love you to feedback how you feel, because my experience is that it's unanimously positive. But other than that, have a lovely day, and I'll see you soon. Take care.